The debate in the House of Lords on the amendment to the Sanctions and Anti-Money Laundering Bill gave peers the opportunity to air their views, but ultimately the point was moot, given that the decision to carry it had already been taken in the Commons.
This proposed law, I regret to say, appears to be old-style colonialism at its worst, damaging legislation which has no cost for the legislating country, but which will cause hardship to the victim countries, and does so not merely without representation, but without consultation or full investigation.
I'm sure, noble lords, as the reaction of the territories and their leaders has demonstrated, legislating for them without their consent risks damaging not only our long-standing constitutional arrangements respecting their autonomy, but also our very proactive, positive, progressive relations with our overseas territories.
We've now heard from the Minister that the government is not prepared to overturn what happened in the Commons. What that means is catastrophe for the financial services in the overseas territories. What on earth was the Foreign and Commonwealth Office doing?
It seems to me shameful that the UK has a far worse record than the overseas territories, and now standing on its head and, as commented, leaving the overseas territories putting them out to dry. I think the way in which this came about in the Commons was candidly improper, and I'm disappointed that the government was not able to stand up to it.
Gibraltar is entirely compliant with all the current requirements. It is bringing a public register into its law early next year. It is unnecessary, unhelpful, and inappropriate that Gibraltar should be held under Clause 22. And it is very sad to find that countries such as Gibraltar should be under proposed regime which would interfere with its constitution.
Other peers voicing their support for Gibraltar were the former Conservative Justice Minister Lord Folkes, who labelled the amendment ill thought out, and the Earl of Kinnoul, who quoted from a report by EU Financial Commissioner Pierre Moscovici, which doesn't include the overseas territories on its lists of non-compliant countries. However, not everyone supported Lord Naisby's amendment.
They failed to take on board the actual figures that Global Witness says that at the moment there is £34 billion of Russian money in the overseas territories.
Both houses agreed on the text to the bill, which is now set to become an Act of Parliament.